My name is Audra Lewis, 68 years old, and I thought 40 years of marriage to Harold meant something. We had the perfect life in Connecticut until I discovered my husband and my daughter-in-law Jasmine were sleeping together behind my back. Harold filed for divorce, thinking I was clueless about their affair. They plotted to strip me of everything I had worked for. Little did they know I had been gathering evidence and preparing for this moment far longer than they could imagine. What happened next changed all our lives forever. Before I continue my story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit the subscribe button if you want more stories about overcoming betrayal and finding strength when life tests you the most. Harold and I built what everyone called a picture-perfect life. We met in college, married young, and weathered life together for 4 decades. Harold had a successful career as an investment banker, working his way up to senior vice president before semi-retiring 5 years ago. I spent 35 years as a school principal devoting my life to education before retiring at 63. Together, we purchased our beautiful colonial home in Westport, Connecticut 35 years ago, raised our son, and created countless memories within those walls. Our son Thomas is 39 now, a brilliant software engineer who always made us proud. He was the kind of child parents dream of having. Studious, kind, and ambitious, he graduated from MIT and quickly climbed the corporate ladder at a major tech company. 5 years ago, he met Jasmine at a tech conference in San Francisco. She was 33, then working in marketing for a competing firm. Thomas was immediately smitten. He called me the very night they met, his voice filled with excitement I hadn't heard since he was a child opening Christmas presents. "Mom, I met someone special," he had said. "She is beautiful, smart, and we connect on every level." After a whirlwind romance, they married in a lavish ceremony 3 years ago. Harold and I spared no expense for the wedding, wanting our only child to have the perfect day. Looking back, I should have noticed the red flags about Jasmine waving right in front of me. During wedding planning, Jasmine seemed more interested in the spectacle than the meaning behind it. She pushed for the most expensive venue, the priciest dress, the most elaborate flowers. When I gently suggested a beautiful but less expensive alternative for the reception, she smiled tightly and said, "Thomas and I deserve the best, and his parents can certainly afford it, right, Audra?" After the wedding, I noticed how Jasmine would subtly criticize my appearance whenever she visited. "That blouse is so classic, Audra. Very appropriate for your generation," or, "Have you ever considered updating your hairstyle? I know a wonderful stylist who works miracles with aging hair." Small cuts that seemed innocent enough that I dismissed them as generational differences. What truly should have alerted me was how Jasmine began visiting our home more frequently when Thomas was traveling for work. She would arrive unannounced, claiming she was checking in on us seniors or just in the neighborhood. Harold seemed pleased with these visits, often suggesting I run errands while he entertained our daughter-in-law. Meanwhile, Harold's behavior was changing too. After 38 years of marriage, you notice the shifts, even subtle ones. My once frugal husband suddenly bought an entirely new wardrobe. Designer suits replaced his sensible department store clothes. At 70, he joined an exclusive gym and began spending hours there daily. His silver hair was now professionally colored and styled weekly. When I asked about these changes, he brushed me off, saying he deserved to enjoy retirement. The late-night phone calls started about 2 years ago. Harold would step outside onto our deck, speaking in hushed tones. When I questioned him, he claimed they were work calls from former colleagues seeking investment advice. Despite being semi-retired for years, he suddenly had important meetings, several evenings a week. I tried to save our marriage. I suggested counseling, planned romantic dinners, even booked a cruise to rekindle our connection. Harold participated half-heartedly, going through the motions while his mind was clearly elsewhere. I colored my hair, updated my wardrobe, and tried new recipes, all hoping to recapture his attention. Nothing worked. Last Thanksgiving, I hosted dinner for our small family. Thomas arrived first, apologizing that Jasmine would be late due to work commitments. Harold seemed unusually disappointed. When she finally arrived 2 hours late, her hair slightly disheveled and wearing a dress I hadn't seen before, Harold perked up immediately. Throughout dinner, I noticed their eyes meeting when Thomas wasn't looking. Harold would pass dishes to Jasmine, their fingers lingering together a moment too long. Jasmine laughed too enthusiastically at Harold's tired old jokes. Jokes she had previously rolled her eyes at. Thomas noticed nothing. He was consumed with a potential promotion detailing his projects between bites of turkey and stuffing. My stomach knotted as I watched the subtle dance between my husband and daughter-in-law happening right under my son's nose. That night I called my sister Janet in tears. "Something is wrong, Janet. I think Harold might be having an affair," I confessed. "With who, that new widow from his golf club?" Janet asked. No, I hesitated, the words catching in my throat. "I think it might be with Jasmine." Janet was silent for a long moment. "Audra, that would be beyond despicable. Are you certain?" "Not completely, but my instincts are screaming." "Then hire a private investigator," Janet suggested. "You need to know for sure before making any accusations." I couldn't bring myself to take that step yet. Part of me still hoped I was wrong, that I was seeing problems where none existed. Perhaps menopause had made me paranoid. Maybe I had watched too many daytime soap operas during retirement. I wanted desperately to believe my family wasn't fracturing before my eyes. For months, I watched and waited, cataloging small moments of suspicion but never finding definitive proof. I vacillated between denial and suspicion, hoping for the best while increasingly fearing the worst. My once peaceful retirement had become an anxious vigil waiting for the other shoe to drop. Little did I know that when it did, my entire world would shatter in ways I couldn't imagine. The moment everything changed happened on an ordinary Tuesday last April. Harold had left for his weekly golf game, and I was cleaning our bedroom. While dusting his nightstand, I accidentally knocked over a small decorative box he kept there. As I collected the scattered contents, I found a smartphone I had never seen before. My hands trembled as I held the unfamiliar device. Harold and I had always shared everything. Why would he need a secret phone? Before I could stop myself, I pressed the power button. It came to life, no password required. Perhaps Harold thought hiding the phone was security enough, or maybe he never expected me to snoop. What I found destroyed my world in an instant. Hundreds of text messages between Harold and Jasmine dating back 6 months. Explicit messages describing their encounters, their feelings for each other, their plans for the future. I sat on our bed, the bed we had shared for decades, and read through their betrayal with growing horror. "I can't wait to be with you properly," Harold had written 3 weeks earlier. "Once the divorce is final and I have secured most of the assets, we can stop sneaking around. Just make sure Audra doesn't suspect anything until everything is signed," Jasmine replied. Thomas is clueless, as always. All focused on his precious career. We need to be patient just a little longer. My breath caught as I read the next exchange. "What about Thomas?" Harold asked. "I will deal with Thomas after. He will be hurt, but he will move on. Men always do. Besides, once your divorce is final, it won't matter what anyone thinks. We will have each other and the money." I sat there for hours reading through months of their conspiracy. They weren't just having an affair. They were plotting to divorce their respective spouses and take everything in the process. The casual cruelty with which they discussed Thomas and me cut deeper than the betrayal itself. We weren't people to them. We were obstacles. When I finally set the phone down, my hands were shaking uncontrollably. In the bathroom, I vomited until nothing remained but bitter bile. Then I sat on the cold tile floor and let myself break apart. I cried until my eyes swelled shut, until my throat was raw from sobbing. I allowed myself this one moment of complete emotional collapse. Then I stood up, washed my face, and began to think strategically. My first call was to my college roommate Elizabeth, now a retired attorney. I drove to her house, bringing Harold's secret phone and a notepad. "This is beyond standard infidelity," Audra Elizabeth said after reviewing the evidence. "They are conspiring to defraud you financially. Do not confront Harold yet. We need to gather more information first." I followed her advice. Instead of confronting Harold, I began collecting financial records. I spent days at our local library using their computers to access our accounts, discovering Harold had been gradually moving money to offshore accounts for months. He had changed beneficiaries on insurance policies, taking my name off and replacing it with a trust I had never heard of. Elizabeth connected me with a private investigator named Marta who specialized in marital cases. I emptied my personal savings to retain her services. Meanwhile, I purchased small security cameras online and installed them throughout our home while Harold was at his regular Thursday client meeting. The cameras revealed the true nature of these meetings within days. That next Thursday, Harold texted that he would be late. 30 minutes later, Jasmine's car pulled into our driveway. The cameras captured them entering our home, embracing in our foyer, and heading upstairs to our bedroom. I watched the footage from a coffee shop across town, my coffee growing cold as tears silently tracked down my cheeks. Over the next few weeks, I gathered more evidence. Bank statements showing unusual withdrawals, investment accounts with recently changed passwords, property documents Harold had been reviewing, all while maintaining a facade of normalcy at home. I cooked his favorite meals, asked about his day, and pretended I didn't know my marriage was already dead. 3 weeks after discovering the phone, Harold sat me down in our living room. His expression was somber, but I caught the gleam of anticipation in his eyes. "Audra, we need to talk," he began, his voice carefully modulated to sound regretful. "I have been doing a lot of thinking lately about us, about our future." I nodded, waiting. "I think we have grown apart over the years. We want different things now. I believe we would both be happier if he paused dramatically, got a divorce." He watched me carefully, clearly expecting tears, protests, or anger. Instead, I responded calmly. "If that is what you want, Harold, I understand." His eyebrows shot up in surprise. This clearly wasn't the reaction he had anticipated. "You are not upset?" he asked cautiously. I gave him a sad smile. "Of course I am sad that our marriage is ending. But I want you to be happy, Harold. If this is what you need, I won't stand in your way." Relief flooded his face, quickly replaced by a calculating look. "I appreciate your understanding, Audra. I have already spoken with my attorney about the process. We can make this quick and painless." "That would be best," I agreed. While inside, I thought of the pain and betrayal his actions had caused. "Just let me know what you need from me." Harold seemed almost giddy as he headed upstairs, no doubt, to text Jasmine about how well his announcement had gone. He had no idea what was coming. No idea at all. The morning after Harold announced his desire for divorce, I visited Sharon Williams, the most formidable divorce attorney in Connecticut. Elizabeth had recommended her highly, calling her the attorney, even attorneys fear facing in court. Her office occupied the entire top floor of a downtown building, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor. "Tell me everything," Sharon said after I was seated. "And I mean everything. The good, the bad, and the ugly. I cannot help you if you hide information from me." For 2 hours, I laid out the entire situation. The affair, the financial manipulation, the conspiracy between Harold and Jasmine, and the evidence I had gathered. Sharon listened intently, occasionally making notes, but mostly absorbing my story without interruption. When I finished, she leaned forward. "Audra, what Harold and Jasmine are doing isn't just immoral. Much of it is illegal. Moving marital assets without disclosure during divorce proceedings is fraud. We can use this to our advantage, but we need to be methodical." Under Sharon's guidance, I began documenting every aspect of our marital assets. I created spreadsheets tracking our 40 years of financial history. Bank accounts, retirement funds, property investments, art collections, family heirlooms. Sharon brought in a forensic accountant who specialized in uncovering hidden assets in divorce cases. "Harold has been busy," the accountant said during our review meeting. "But not as clever as he thinks. We can trace most of the transfers. He has moved approximately $2.3 million to accounts in the Cayman Islands over the past 8 months. Can we recover those funds?" I asked. "With proper court orders, yes," Sharon assured me. "But we need to time this perfectly." While building our financial case, my private investigator Marta made another disturbing discovery. Harold had been meeting with a psychiatrist, Dr. Patel, who specialized in evaluating mental competency for court cases. According to Marta's sources, Harold was attempting to build a case that I was mentally unstable and incapable of managing my own financial affairs. "He's setting you up to challenge any claims you might make," Sharon explained. "We need to counteract this immediately." I began seeing a highly respected therapist, Dr. Levine, twice weekly. After several sessions, she provided a comprehensive evaluation of my mental health, stating explicitly that I was of sound mind and under no cognitive impairments. We added this to our growing file of evidence. Meanwhile, I opened new bank accounts at a different bank, funded with money from my teacher's pension that Harold couldn't access. I secured important documents, family photographs, and sentimental items at my sister Janet's home. I made copies of everything in our home safe and documented all valuable items with photographs and appraisals. As I prepared, Harold grew increasingly confident and careless. He extended his golf games and client meetings without bothering to create believable excuses. The security cameras captured him and Jasmine in our home, with increasing frequency always when he thought I was out running errands or visiting friends. Most disturbing was how Jasmine began visiting our home, openly claiming she was supporting the family during this difficult time. She would bring casseroles or offer to help me organize closets, all while wearing a mask of false sympathy. "Divorce can be so disorienting at your age, Audra," she said one afternoon, while helping me sort through kitchen cabinets. "Thomas and I just want to make sure you're managing okay through all of this." Thomas called me frequently confused about the sudden divorce announcement. "Dad won't give me a straight answer, Mom. He just keeps saying you two grew apart. After 40 years, that doesn't make any sense." I hated keeping Thomas in the dark, but Sharon advised against revealing the affair until we had our legal strategy fully in place. "The moment Thomas knows, Jasmine will know that you know," she explained. "We lose the element of surprise." So I gave Thomas the same vague explanations, promising we would talk more in person soon. It broke my heart to hear his confusion, but I knew protecting him from the full truth temporarily was necessary. 6 weeks into our divorce proceedings, Harold's attorney presented the initial settlement offer. I sat in Sharon's office as she reviewed the documents, her expression growing increasingly incredulous. "This is beyond insulting," Sharon said, tossing the papers aside. "They're offering you 15% of the marital assets, no alimony, and you forfeit all rights to the house. Meanwhile, Harold keeps his entire retirement fund, all investment properties, and the art collection. I wouldn't accept this offer if you had cheated on him with his entire golf club." "What should we do?" I asked. "Pretend to consider it," Sharon advised. "Act devastated but resigned. Make them think their plan is working. Meanwhile, we continue building our case." That evening, I tearfully told Harold I had received his settlement offer and needed time to process it. He patted my shoulder awkwardly, assuring me it was very generous considering the circumstances. I nodded sadly, noticing how he checked his watch, no doubt counting the minutes until he could update Jasmine. My private investigator confirmed they celebrated that night at La Maison, an expensive French restaurant downtown. Marta's photographs showed them toasting, with Champagne Harold leaning across the table to kiss Jasmine's hand. Their celebration was premature. While monitoring their communications, I discovered something even more disturbing. Jasmine had been manipulating Thomas's finances as well. She had convinced him to invest in several startup opportunities that appeared to be funneling money into accounts she controlled. My son was being swindled by his own wife. The final blow came when Thomas called to share what he thought was happy news. "Mom, I wanted you to know before we tell everyone else. Jasmine is pregnant. You're going to be a grandmother." My blood ran cold. Given the timing and what I knew about Harold and Jasmine's affair, I immediately questioned the paternity. But I forced enthusiasm into my voice. "That's wonderful news, Thomas. How far along is she?" "About 10 weeks. She's due in February." I did the mental calculation. The baby had been conceived during Thomas's extended business trip to Tokyo 2 months earlier, a trip where he had been thousands of miles away from Jasmine for 3 weeks. I relayed this information to Sharon during our next meeting. She added it to our growing file. "We're almost ready," she said. "Harold's attorney has scheduled the final settlement meeting for next Wednesday. They'll present the formal agreement for you to sign. That's when we'll make our move." I nodded, a strange calm settling over me. For weeks I had been playing the role of the naive, devastated wife. Soon I would show them exactly who they had underestimated. 1 week before our final divorce meeting, I told Harold I needed space to process everything and would be staying with my sister Janet for a few days. Harold barely concealed his delight. "That is probably for the best," he said, patting my shoulder awkwardly. "Take all the time you need." Instead of going to Janet's, I checked into the Harborview Hotel just 20 minutes from our home. From this command center, I coordinated the final phase of my plan with Sharon, Marta, and my support team. Marta called me the evening I supposedly left town. "They didn't waste any time, Audra. Jasmine arrived at your house 30 minutes after you left. She brought 3 suitcases and what looked like shopping bags from high-end stores." The security cameras I had installed throughout our home began sending alerts to my phone immediately. I watched in real time as Jasmine walked through my house, running her hands over my possessions, opening closets and drawers as if taking inventory. "This master bath needs a complete renovation," she told Harold as they stood in my bathroom. "The tile is so dated and that tub is practically prehistoric." "Whatever you want, sweetheart," Harold replied, pulling her close. "Once the divorce is final, this place is getting a total makeover." Audra's taste was always so conservative. They moved into the bedroom, my bedroom, making plans to replace my carefully chosen furnishings while desecrating my marriage bed. I muted the audio temporarily, unable to bear hearing their intimacy in my most private space. Later that evening, they sat in the kitchen drinking wine from our wedding crystal as they discussed their plans in shocking detail. "Leonard says the final meeting is just a formality," Harold said, referring to his attorney. "He has prepared the documents giving me full rights to the house and primary assets. Audra will get the condo in Florida and a modest settlement." Jasmine frowned. "She is still getting the Florida condo. I thought we were selling that." Harold shrugged. "It is the least valuable property. Leonard says giving her something makes us look reasonable to the mediator." "And she has no idea about the offshore accounts," Jasmine pressed. "None whatsoever," Harold chuckled. "Leonard has prepared a document she will sign waiving all rights to any undisclosed property or assets discovered after the divorce. Once she signs, even if she later discovers the other accounts, she cannot touch them." "Perfect." Jasmine smiled, raising her glass. "To our future." Their discussion continued, revealing the full extent of their betrayal. Harold had been transferring money from our joint accounts for over a year. He had photographed and cataloged items he considered his from our home, including family heirlooms from my side of the family that had been in my possession before our marriage. "What about her grandmother's silver service?" Jasmine asked, pointing to my family's 300-year-old colonial silver displayed in the dining room cabinet. "Already included in my personal property list," Harold assured her. Leonard added specific language covering all items currently in the residence. "Since you have officially moved in before the final papers are signed, we can claim any confusion about ownership was just that, confusion." Their casual cruelty was breathtaking. These were people who claimed to love us, plotting to strip us of everything meaningful without remorse. The next morning, I watched as Jasmine went through my closet trying on my clothes and jewelry. "Some of these pieces are actually nice," she said, modeling my diamond anniversary necklace Harold had given me on our 30th anniversary. "Vintage, but elegant. I could wear this to the club." "Anything of Audra's you want is yours," Harold promised. "Consider it an early birthday present." That afternoon, they sat in Harold's office reviewing financial documents. I zoomed the camera to capture clear images of account numbers and statements visible on his desk. "The Cayman account is now at $3.2 million, Harold said proudly. "Once we add the proceeds from selling the vacation properties, we should be over $4 million, all completely sheltered from U.S. taxes." "And Thomas has no idea about any of this?" Jasmine asked. "Thomas trusts me implicitly," Harold replied. "He believes everything I tell him about the divorce. That his mother and I simply grew apart. That these things happen." Jasmine laughed, a cold sound that chilled me even through the camera feed. "Thomas is so naive, always buried in his computer programs, oblivious to what is happening right in front of him." "Speaking of Thomas," Harold said carefully, "the baby." Jasmine placed a protective hand over her slightly rounded abdomen. What about it? Are you certain he will not question the timing? You were together in March when he returned from Tokyo, correct? Jasmine waved dismissively. Men understand nothing about pregnancy dating. I will tell him it was conceived right after he returned. He will believe whatever I say. And if he wants a paternity test, for medical records or something similar, he will not ask for one. But if he did, Jasmine's voice hardened, I would be deeply offended that he would question my fidelity. I would make him feel terrible for even suggesting it. Trust me, Harold. I know how to handle Thomas. I just worry, Harold said. If he found out the baby is mine. My breath caught. Though I had suspected as much hearing, the confirmation was still devastating. He will not find out, Jasmine insisted. And once your divorce is final, and I file for divorce from Thomas claiming irreconcilable differences, it will not matter anyway. We just need to time everything correctly. I sent the video clips to Sharon immediately. She called within minutes. This is beyond what even I expected, she said, her voice tight with controlled anger. They are not just having an affair, they are systematically defrauding both you and Thomas. The tax evasion alone could result in criminal charges. What about the baby? I asked, my voice breaking. Should I tell Thomas? Not yet, Sharon advised. Let us handle everything in sequence. We will present all evidence at once, including the paternity issue. It will be painful for Thomas, but learning everything piecemeal would only prolong his suffering. I spent the next 5 days documenting every conversation, every plan, every incriminating statement. Harold and Jasmine grew increasingly careless, clearly believing I was completely in the dark. The night before our final divorce meeting, they had Thomas over for dinner. My security cameras captured the entire painful scene. I am really sorry about you, and Mom, Thomas said as they ate in my dining room. I still do not understand what happened. Sometimes people just grow apart, Harold said smoothly. Your mother and I want different things now, but we both still love you very much. And we will always be family, Jasmine added, reaching over to squeeze Thomas's hand. The baby will need his grandmother in his life. I know, Thomas sighed. It just seems so sudden. 40 years together, and then just like that it is over. Life surprises us sometimes, Harold said, exchanging a quick glance with Jasmine. But I promise, son, everything will work out for the best. Watching my son being lied to so blatantly by the two people he trusted most besides me broke my heart. But tomorrow would bring truth, however painful. Tomorrow, the carefully constructed web of lies would finally collapse. The morning of our final meeting, I met Sharon at her office to review our strategy one last time. She handed me a thick folder. This contains copies of everything we will present today, she explained. Financial records, video evidence, text messages, Marta's surveillance photos, everything. Are you ready for this, Audra? It will be intense. I thought about 40 years of marriage. About the life Harold and I had built together. About our son about to have his world shattered. About the grandchild I would love regardless of paternity. About the betrayal that cut to the bone. I am ready, I said firmly. Let's finish this. The conference room at Leonard Goldstein's law firm exuded power and privilege. Mahogany paneling, leather chairs, and a view of the harbor that reminded clients they were paying for prestige as much as legal expertise. Harold arrived first with Leonard, both men in expensive suits exuding confidence. Harold barely glanced at me as I entered with Sharon. Audra Leonard greeted me with professional courtesy. I understand this is difficult, but we appreciate your cooperation in finalizing matters today. Sharon merely nodded, arranging her materials methodically. I sat quietly, hands folded in my lap, the picture of resignation. The door opened again, and Jasmine walked in. Her presence was completely inappropriate for a divorce settlement meeting, but neither Harold nor Leonard seemed surprised. I hope you do not mind, Jasmine said with artificial sweetness. I thought Harold might need moral support today. Before Sharon could object, the door opened once more. Thomas entered, looking uncertain. Thomas Harold's surprise seemed genuine. What are you doing here, son? Mom asked me to come, Thomas said, glancing between us. She said it was important that I be here, that it concerned our whole family. Harold shot me a suspicious look. This was not part of his script. Jasmine shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Perhaps this is not the best setting for family matters, Leonard suggested smoothly. This meeting is specifically to finalize the divorce settlement. My son has every right to be here, I said quietly. This does concern him, deeply. Leonard looked to Harold, who nodded reluctantly. Fine. Let us proceed. For the next 30 minutes, Leonard outlined the settlement terms. The division of property heavily favored Harold. The financial arrangements left me with a fraction of our marital assets. The presentation was designed to make it all seem reasonable, inevitable, and final. And now, Leonard concluded, sliding a document across the table. If Audra will sign this final waiver of claims against any additional assets or properties not specifically enumerated in our agreement, we can conclude these proceedings. Harold leaned forward slightly, watching intently as I picked up the document. This was the moment he had been working toward. The trap was about to close. I scanned the document slowly, a small smile forming on my lips. I looked up, meeting Harold's eyes directly for perhaps the first time since discovering his betrayal. This is very interesting, I said calmly. Before I sign, I wonder if we might address a few concerns. Leonard frowned slightly. The time for negotiations has passed, Audra. This meeting is simply to finalize what has already been agreed upon in principle. Oh, I understand, I nodded. But there seem to be some discrepancies between this document and certain information I have recently become aware of. Sharon chose this moment to open her briefcase. She removed a USB drive and several thick folders. Mr. Goldstein, Sharon said formally, before your client and my client finalize anything, I believe it is in everyone's interest to review some additional evidence that has recently come to light. Harold's face tightened. What is this? Thomas looked confused, glancing between his father and me. Mom, what's going on? That is what I would like to know. Jasmine interjected, her voice brittle with sudden tension. I took a deep breath. This was the moment that would change everything. There was no going back. Harold. I began, my voice steady. For the past 3 months, I have been aware of your affair with Jasmine. The room went silent. Thomas turned to stare at his father, then at his wife, disbelief etched on his face. That is ridiculous, Jasmine said quickly. Audra, are you having some kind of episode? Sharon connected the USB drive to the conference room's display system. Perhaps this will clarify matters. The large screen on the wall came to life, showing Harold and Jasmine entering our home together. The timestamp clearly showed the date just 1 week earlier. The next clip showed them embracing in our kitchen, then heading upstairs. What is this? Thomas demanded, his voice cracking. Dad, Jasmine, what is happening? Harold had gone pale. Audra, turn that off immediately. I am afraid we are just getting started, Sharon said, calmly advancing to the next video. This clip showed Harold and Jasmine in his office, discussing the offshore accounts in detail. The financial documents on his desk were clearly visible. Is that $3 million? Thomas asked incredulously. Dad, what offshore accounts? Leonard was furiously writing notes. This appears to be illegally obtained surveillance. It would be inadmissible in any court. Perhaps, Sharon agreed. But the financial records we subpoenaed from the Cayman Islands banking authorities are perfectly admissible. As are the records of wire transfers from your joint accounts, Harold. Transfers made without Audra's knowledge or consent during divorce proceedings. She slid a folder toward Leonard. This constitutes financial fraud during divorce, as I'm sure you're aware. Harold's expression had transformed from confidence to barely controlled panic. He turned to Leonard, whispering urgently. Leonard's face grew increasingly grave as he flipped through the financial documents. Sharon continued presenting evidence methodically. Text messages between Harold and Jasmine. Surveillance photos of their meetings. Financial records showing systematic movement of marital assets. Thomas sat motionless, his face ashen as the evidence of betrayal mounted. When Sharon played the video of Harold and Jasmine discussing the baby's paternity, he made a strangled sound. "The baby is yours," Thomas asked, his father voice hollow with shock. "My wife is pregnant with your child." "Thomas, I can explain." Jasmine began reaching for his hand. Thomas recoiled from her touch. "Explain what? That you have been sleeping with my father, that you lied about the baby being mine." "Son, please." Harold tried to interject. "Do not call me," that Thomas snapped, standing abruptly. "How long has this been going on? Was anything ever real between us?" "Jasmine?" Jasmine's composed facade cracked. "Thomas, you never saw me. You were always working, always distracted. Harold appreciated me." "Appreciated you," Thomas laughed bitterly. "Is that what you call planning to take my mother's home and my father's money? Was that the plan all along, to marry me to get close to my family's wealth?" Harold stood up, motioning to Leonard. "We need to discuss this privately. Now." Leonard nodded grimly. "A recess would be advisable." "Before you go," Sharon interjected, "you should know we have filed preliminary injunctions freezing all accounts identified in our investigation, including the offshore holdings. Additionally, we have notified the IRS regarding potential tax evasion concerning undeclared foreign assets." Harold's face went from pale to gray. Tax evasion carried potential criminal penalties, not just financial ones. As Harold and Leonard stepped out for their emergency consultation, Jasmine attempted to follow. "Jasmine, please stay," I said calmly. "We are not finished." "I have nothing to say to any of you," she hissed, her pleasant mask completely gone. "Then perhaps you should listen," Sharon suggested. "Because in addition to the divorce proceedings, we are preparing to file separate civil actions against you personally for alienation of affection and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Given the evidence, including your explicit statements about manipulating Thomas for financial gain, these cases have merit." Thomas stared at Jasmine as if seeing her for the first time. "Was any of it real? Did you ever love me at all?" Jasmine's eyes darted around the room like a trapped animal's. "Thomas, your father pursued me. He promised me things. This is not my fault." "The videos suggest otherwise," Sharon noted. "Your active participation in financial fraud and deliberate deception regarding the paternity of your child tell a very different story." When Harold and Leonard returned 20 minutes later, the atmosphere had changed dramatically. Leonard looked resigned, Harold defeated. "We would like to propose an alternative settlement," Leonard began formally. "I bet you would," Sharon replied. "But I think you will find our terms are non-negotiable at this point." The new divorce agreement looked nothing like the original. Under the crushing weight of evidence, Harold had no choice but to accept Sharon's terms. "I received 75% of all marital assets, full ownership of our Connecticut home, and complete restoration of my family heirlooms that Harold had tried to claim as his own." Harold's attempts to salvage something from the wreckage were painful to watch. Audra, surely 40 years of marriage means something he pleaded during a break in negotiations. "Everyone makes mistakes." "This was not a mistake, Harold," I replied calmly. "This was a calculated betrayal that would have left me financially devastated while you started a new life with my son's wife. Actions have consequences." As the full implications of the evidence became clear, Jasmine's alliance with Harold crumbled rapidly. She turned on him with stunning viciousness. "You told me she would never find out," she accused loudly in the hallway outside the conference room. "You promised me everything was handled. Now my life is ruined." "Your life is ruined," Harold shot back. "I am facing possible criminal charges because of the financial maneuvers you encouraged." Thomas, having heard enough, formally announced his intention to divorce Jasmine immediately. "I will be filing for divorce on grounds of adultery," he told her, his voice steady despite the pain evident in his eyes. "And I will be requesting a court-ordered paternity test." "You cannot prove anything," Jasmine tried one last desperate lie. "We literally have video of you and my father discussing the fact that he is the baby's father," Thomas replied wearily. "It's over, Jasmine." The following weeks brought a cascade of consequences neither Harold nor Jasmine had anticipated. The paternity test confirmed what we already knew: Harold was indeed the father of Jasmine's unborn child. This scientific confirmation was the final blow to any attempts Harold made to reconcile with Thomas. When news of the scandal reached Harold's former company, the board of directors called an emergency meeting. Although Harold was officially retired, he had maintained a position as a consultant and sat on several subsidiary boards. These positions were terminated immediately, and his company pension was recalculated to the minimum legal requirement rather than the generous arrangement he had negotiated. "They cannot do this," Harold complained when he received the formal letter. "I built that company." "And then you destroyed your reputation," Thomas responded when Harold sought his sympathy. "What did you expect?" Jasmine found herself suddenly homeless. Thomas changed the locks on their apartment and arranged for her belongings to be placed in storage. With nowhere else to go, she initially moved into Harold's temporary accommodations, an expensive hotel suite that rapidly depleted his available funds. Their forced proximity did not improve their relationship. Without the thrill of secrecy and the promise of wealth, their affair quickly soured. They fought constantly, each blaming the other for their predicament. "You promised me security and luxury," Jasmine screamed during one argument overheard by hotel staff. "Now I have nothing, no husband, no home, no future." "You promised me discretion and support," Harold countered. "Instead, you were careless and greedy, always pushing for more faster." The financial consequences mounted rapidly. The IRS investigation into Harold's undisclosed offshore accounts resulted in substantial penalties and interest. Tax evasion charges were filed, and while Harold eventually reached a settlement that avoided jail time, the financial penalties were severe. His remaining liquid assets were frozen during the investigation, leaving him unable to maintain his expensive lifestyle. The hotel eventually asked him to leave when his bill reached 6 figures, and his credit cards were declined. Jasmine, finding herself attached to a man now without wealth or influence, began searching for an exit strategy. She contacted Thomas, repeatedly alternating between threats and pleas for reconciliation. Thomas, with the support of an excellent therapist, maintained firm boundaries and proceeded with the divorce. Jasmine's professional life collapsed alongside her personal one. The marketing firm where she had worked terminated her employment after clients expressed concerns about the scandal. Her attempts to find new positions were hampered by the story that had now spread throughout their professional circles. Within 6 months of our divorce settlement, both Harold and Jasmine had experienced dramatic reversals of fortune. Harold was living in a small apartment, working part-time as a financial advisor at a strip mall tax preparation office. His attempts to rebuild his investment portfolio were hampered by the substantial penalties and legal fees that had consumed most of his remaining assets. Jasmine, unable to maintain her lifestyle and unwelcome in our social circles, eventually moved back to her parents' home in Ohio. The final humiliation for her was having to explain to her conservative parents how she had come to be pregnant with her father-in-law's child while still married to his son. I observed these developments from a distance, taking no pleasure in their downfall, but recognizing the natural consequences of their actions. I focused instead on rebuilding my own life and supporting Thomas through his pain and recovery. The community that Harold had expected to abandon me instead rallied around me. Friends who had drifted away during the last years of my marriage returned, offering support and companionship. I began volunteering at my former school, finding purpose in mentoring young teachers. Thomas spent weekends at my home, our relationship growing stronger through shared healing. We talked honestly about the betrayal, the pain, and the process of moving forward. "How did you stay so calm through all of it, Mom?" he asked one evening as we sat on my deck watching the sunset. "I would have been screaming, breaking things." "Screaming would have felt good momentarily," I admitted. "But it would not have changed anything. Strategic patience served me better in the end." As Harold and Jasmine's situations deteriorated, I took one final protective action. I formally changed my will, ensuring that Thomas would inherit everything while protecting those assets from any potential claims by Harold or Jasmine in the future. The lawyer who helped me draft the new documents assured me it was virtually impenetrable. "Your son's inheritance is secure," she confirmed. "Whatever happens with his ex-wife or your ex-husband in the future, these assets are protected." That evening, I looked around my home now, truly mine alone. The rooms had been rearranged to my taste, Harold's presence systematically removed. I felt something I had not expected: peace. Not happiness, not yet, but a profound sense that justice had been served not through vengeance, but through truth. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, my life had found a new rhythm. The home that Harold and I had shared for 35 years now reflected only my taste and preferences. I had redecorated room by room, a therapeutic process of reclaiming my space. The formal living room we rarely used was now my art studio. The dark mahogany furniture Harold preferred had been replaced with lighter, airier pieces that made the rooms feel more spacious and welcoming. Harold was adjusting to his dramatically different circumstances. His small one-bedroom apartment was a far cry from our 4,000-square-foot colonial. At 72, he was working part-time at a financial services firm that specialized in tax preparation for middle-income clients. The irony of this position, given his tax evasion charges, was not lost on anyone. Jasmine had given birth to a healthy baby boy in February. She named him Harold Jr. despite my ex-husband's objections. She was living with her parents in Cincinnati, occasionally posting on social media about the joys of single motherhood, carefully crafting a narrative that omitted the scandalous circumstances of her child's conception. Thomas had thrown himself into his work after finalizing his divorce. He had been promoted to senior development director at his company and had recently purchased a small but elegant condo in the city. He came to dinner every Sunday, and slowly I watched the light return to his eyes as he processed his grief and betrayal. "I think I might be ready to date again," he told me one Sunday in August. "Not seriously, just coffee or dinner. Is that crazy, Mom?" "After everything." "Not crazy at all," I assured him. "You are young, Thomas. 40 is not the end of life. It is barely the middle." "How about you?" he asked carefully. "Have you thought about dating?" I considered the question seriously. I have. Not immediately, but I am not closing that door either. My healing journey had not been linear. The initial shock and anger gave way to profound grief. For weeks after the divorce was finalized, I would wake up at 3 a.m, my body still accustomed to Harold's presence beside me after 40 years. The emptiness would hit me anew each time, and I would curl around my pillow and allow myself to cry. Dr. Levine, the therapist who had initially evaluated me during the divorce proceedings, became an essential part of my recovery. During our weekly sessions, I processed not just the betrayal but the subtle signs I had ignored for years. "You mentioned that Harold became increasingly critical of you about 5 years ago," Dr. Levine noted during one session. "Around the time Thomas met Jasmine. Do you think there might have been a connection even then?" The thought had occurred to me as well. Possibly. Or perhaps seeing Thomas with a younger woman made Harold more aware of his own age and mortality. Either way, I spent too many years trying to please someone who had already decided I was not enough. And now she asked, "Who are you trying to please now, Audra?" "Just myself," I replied, surprised to realize how novel that concept felt after decades of marriage. Reconnecting with old friends became another healing pathway. Janet, my sister, visited from Florida for a month, her presence filling the house with laughter again. My college roommates organized a weekend reunion, and for 3 days we talked, laughed, and reminisced as if we were 20 again. I rediscovered passions I had set aside during my marriage. Watercolor painting, which Harold had dismissed as an expensive hobby, became a daily practice. I joined a local choir, my voice blending with others in a way that healed something broken inside me. I took cooking classes, learning to prepare meals that I enjoyed, rather than catering to Harold's conservative palate. The travel experiences I had longed for, but Harold had always deferred, suddenly became possible. I booked a 2-week painting retreat in Provence, something I had dreamed about for decades. I visited Janet in Florida without having to negotiate dates around Harold's golf schedule. I took Thomas to Scotland for a week, a trip we had often discussed but never prioritized. My volunteer work at my former school brought unexpected joy. Mentoring young teachers reconnected me to my passion for education. The principal, a former student of mine, created an official position for me as teacher mentor emeritus. a title that made me laugh but filled me with pride. 6 months after the divorce, I received an unexpected text from Harold asking to meet for lunch. My initial instinct was to refuse, but after consultation with Dr. Levine, I agreed to a brief meeting at a neutral location. Harold had aged visibly in the months since our divorce. His designer clothes had been replaced by off-the-rack alternatives, his carefully colored hair now showing significant gray. He seemed smaller, somehow diminished by circumstances. "Thank you for agreeing to see me, Audra," he began formally. "I wanted to apologize in person for everything that happened." "Which part exactly?" I asked. Not unkindly, but unwilling to accept a vague blanket apology. He sighed heavily. "All of it. The affair with Jasmine, the financial deception, the attempts to take what was rightfully yours, the years of taking you for granted before any of that began." He paused, looking down at his hands. "I destroyed everything good in my life. Our marriage, my relationship with Thomas, my reputation, my financial security. And for what? A fantasy that fell apart the moment reality intruded." I studied him carefully, searching for signs of manipulation or self-pity. Instead, I saw genuine regret. It did not change anything, but I found I could acknowledge it. "I accept your apology, Harold. Not because you deserve forgiveness, but because holding on to anger would only harm me further." "Are you happy, Audra?" he asked, something like wonder in his voice. I considered the question seriously. "I am at peace. Happiness comes and goes. Peace is more sustainable." We parted without drama, two people who had shared a lifetime together now moving in entirely different directions. I had no desire to maintain any relationship with Harold, but I could release the active anger that had initially fueled me. That felt like its own kind of freedom. Thomas and I continued to rebuild our relationship stronger in some ways, for having weathered the storm together. He came to dinner most Sundays, sometimes bringing colleagues or friends. Occasionally, he would mention something about Jasmine or the baby, usually information gleaned from mutual acquaintances. "Jasmine is trying to move back to Connecticut," he mentioned one Sunday. "Apparently living with her parents at 34 is not the life she envisioned." "And the baby?" I asked carefully. Harold Jr. Thomas said with a wry smile. "Dad sends support checks, but has only seen him twice. Jasmine is threatening to sue for more child support." I nodded, keeping my opinions to myself. The child was innocent in all this, and despite the circumstances of his birth, he was still technically my grandson. Perhaps someday there would be a relationship there, but for now, distance seemed healthiest for everyone. As my first year of single life progressed, I reflected often on the warning signs I had ignored throughout my marriage. The subtle criticisms that had eroded my confidence, the financial decisions made without my full participation, the gradual distancing that I had attributed to normal marital evolution, rather than recognizing it as the red flag it was. I began journaling these reflections initially as a therapeutic exercise suggested by Dr. Levine. Over time, these journal entries evolved into something more structured. With encouragement from Janet, I shaped them into essays about resilience, self-respect, and recovery after betrayal. Eventually, these essays formed the foundation of a book aimed at helping other women navigate similar circumstances. The process of writing became yet another pathway to healing. Transforming my pain into something potentially useful for others gave purpose to experiences that might otherwise have remained simply painful. Perhaps the most profound lesson from the entire ordeal was learning to trust myself again. Not just my instincts about others, though those had certainly been sharpened by experience, but my ability to handle whatever life presented. I had faced the worst betrayal imaginable, and not only survived but eventually thrived. 1 year after the divorce, I hosted a regeneration party as an alternative to an anniversary. Janet, my closest friends Thomas, and several colleagues gathered in my garden, which I had completely redesigned that spring. To new beginnings, Janet toasted, raising her glass, and to my sister, who showed us all what resilience truly looks like. Later, as the evening wound down and guests departed, Thomas lingered on the patio. "I am proud of you, Mom," he said simply. "Most people would have been destroyed by what happened. You rebuilt your life instead." "We both did," I reminded him. "And we are both still works in progress." Looking back on the journey from betrayal to recovery, I realized that the most valuable thing I had reclaimed was not the house or the financial assets, though those certainly mattered. The most precious recovery was my sense of self, my understanding of my own worth, independent of anyone else's validation. Harold and Jasmine had conspired to take everything from me seeing me as an inconvenient obstacle to their happiness. In the end, their actions cost them everything, while revealing strengths in me I might never have discovered otherwise. Life continues to unfold in unexpected ways. At 69, I am not the woman I expected to be at this stage of life. I am single rather than celebrating a 41st wedding anniversary. I am rebuilding relationships rather than enjoying the fruits of decades-long connections. I am discovering new aspects of myself rather than settling into comfortable, familiar patterns. And yet, there is a sweetness to this unexpected life, a freedom to choose based solely on my own preferences, a hard-won wisdom about human nature and resilience, a deeper connection with those who proved themselves true friends during the darkest times. Have you ever experienced betrayal that forced you to rebuild your life? What helped you find strength when you needed it most? Share your story in the comments below. And if you found value in my experience, please like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who might need to hear that there is life after betrayal. Remember, it is never too late to reclaim your joy and rebuild your life on your own terms. Thank you for listening to my story, and I wish you strength and peace on your own journey.